Hey there, I'm estate planning attorney Paul Rabelais, and in this video we'll talk about whether funds in an individual retirement account or IRA are protected from Medicaid and nursing home expenses. Okay, so let me give you some background and then we'll jump right into it. So nursing home expenses cause many, particularly in that middle class area, nursing home expenses cause many of the middle class to lose their estate to nursing home costs, preventing them an opportunity to leave their estate, to their loved ones. So nursing home expenses, I don't know, you can look it up on what the average is, but a lot of the things I read say that an average annual cost in a nursing home in America, somewhere around maybe $90,000 or so. So if you have an expense like that for several years, or lo and behold, if husband and wife are in a nursing home together, you double that, $180,000 a year. It can wipe some stuff out pretty quick. So the strategy to avoid that has been to get assets out of your name. A lot written and said about that. Some people move assets into their children's names, but those people don't like to do that because they lose control over what they have. Some people prefer to move those assets to a particular kind of trust because they can retain control over those assets even though they've been transferred out of their name. And oh, by the way, it works best when you make these transfers at least 5 years before you step foot or enter a nursing home and apply for Medicaid. So this video is not about the 5-year rule. I've done other videos on that. This is about what if what you own is an IRA, because quite frankly, it's pretty easy to transfer ownership of a piece of real estate, of a CD that you have, of some stock that you own. All those things, you can retitle those assets perhaps into a trust, and no tax is triggered to anyone. So it's a pretty simple transaction. Now, when you have an IRA, really all bets are off. It's a different story. So the first question people often ask is, well, Paul, is an IRA one of these assets that Medicaid would take or the nursing home would take if I went into a nursing home? So here's where some state laws can vary. Medicaid is a federal program administered by each individual state. So states have some leeway as long as they follow the federal rules. I'm here in Louisiana, but I do realize that laws can vary from state to state. So here in Louisiana, there's no gray area here. I have one of the pages from our Louisiana Medicaid eligibility manual, which talks about IRAs. It says money put into an IRA. And when they say IRA, they're also referring to 401k accounts with your employer or former employer, other similar retirement accounts. Money put into an IRA can usually be withdrawn regardless of whether or not the individual is working. That's the preface. And then the big bang. Count funds in an IRA as a countable resource. So there you go. If you have funds in an IRA, they're just like funds that you have in the bank and your savings account, stock, mutual funds that you own. It's a countable resource. And oh, by the way, if you have more than $2,000 of countable resources when you enter a nursing home and apply for Medicaid, you're not going to qualify for Medicaid until you, in theory, spend all of those assets down on your own care until you have less than $2,000 remaining. Okay, so I know in other states, the rule regarding whether an IRA is a countable resource can be different. I know in some states it says the Medicaid rules in other states say if the IRA is in payout status, meaning the IRA is taking his required minimum distributions, then you don't count the IRA as a countable resource, but that's not the case here in Louisiana. And oh, by the way, with a Roth IRA, it's no different. And a Roth IRA is considered a countable resource. You just don't have to pay taxes to take the money out of the Roth IRA. Some of you may be saying, well, having that traditional IRA as a countable resource really isn't fair because there could be penalties and taxes due to have to take it out to go spend it on the nursing home. So they address that in our Medicaid manual. For people who are under 59 and a half, they are penalized if they take money out of their IRA. It's a 10% penalty on top of the income taxes that you have to pay. So our Medicaid manual says if there is a penalty assessed for early withdrawal, count the amount available after the penalty is deducted. Well, that makes sense. So they're only going to count, if you have $100,000 in your IRA and there would be a $10,000 penalty, then they're saying that's really a $90,000 asset. When it comes to taxes, it's a different story. It says if there are taxes owed on the funds, count the amount before taxes are deducted. So in that example, $100,000 IRA, you'd get whacked with a $10,000 penalty for early withdrawal. And you'd also, that amount would be included in your taxable income. Let's say there were $20,000 of taxes owed on that distribution. Well, they say that's a $90,000 accountable resource there. Okay, so moving on. Now, I will tell you though that for married couples in Louisiana, sometimes you have a circumstance when only one of those spouses goes into the nursing home. That spouse is called the institutionalized spouse. One spouse stays at home. That spouse is called the community spouse. Has nothing to do with community property, but they're called the community spouse because they're still living in the community. So that couple, they look at the combined assets of those spouses, and if that spouse who's in the nursing home applies for Medicaid in 2019, we don't have the 2020 numbers yet, but if it's in 2019, that married couple can have $126,420. That's what's called the community spouse resource allowance. The thought there is if one spouse is still at home, they got to have something to live off of. So they can have $126,420 of assets, and the spouse who's in the nursing home would still qualify for Medicaid. So sometimes if a couple has an IRA, they figure out, well, at least $126,000 of that will be protected. All right, let's go on down now. Based on all of that, what's some strategy to try to protect the IRA? Well, the strategy is plan ahead. Planning to be eligible for Medicaid is not something that works when you do it at the last minute. It's not something that works when you or your spouse or your parent is on the doorstep of the nursing home. It's got to be done in advance because of this penalty that gets assessed if you've transferred anything out of your name within 5 years prior to going into a nursing home and applying for Medicaid. So you got to plan ahead. So here's where some things that really may sound crazy on the first time you hear them, but then may make some sense if you think about it. And I'll say it sounds crazy just because the common thought out there is never take an IRA distribution until you have to. Take only your required minimum distributions, defer income taxes. So however, some, in order to protect as much as you can for yourself and for your family and kind of from the government, sometimes taking more than the required distributions earlier than they're required will help your family save a significant amount of wealth. Even if you never go in a nursing home, it may save your family a significant amount of assets because if you keep all of those IRAs in your name and just take the required distributions, well, yes, if you go to a nursing home, they're going to make you take all the money out of the IRA, pay the taxes, and then spend the money. But if you don't go into a nursing home and you've kept all of the IRA money and your kids are in a higher income tax bracket than you because they're working and you're not, your family's going to lose out. So let's say your kids are in the 35% income tax bracket and you're in the low 20s income tax bracket. Well, it might behoove your family for you to take more out than required under the at the low 20s rate or whatever it might be, and then pass that along tax-free to your family, or either in a trust or when you die or by giving it to them ahead of time. And that will mean more assets for your family. Okay, so I'm trying to introduce you to I'm not saying everybody should do it, but at least understand that that's a possibility. Take more distributions than you have to, perhaps at lower income tax rates, and then move those after-tax funds into perhaps a trust where those assets would not be counted for nursing home purposes. Because what I probably should have said at the very beginning is that you can't just transfer an IRA to your children. You can't transfer an IRA to a trust. An IRA has to be in an individual's name, and the only way to get those IRA assets out of your name for nursing home purposes is to take distributions from the IRA, pay the tax, and then transfer the after-tax proceeds out of your name. So with all that being said, let me give you a little example. Let's say we got dad and mom. Dad has a $300,000 IRA in his name, and dad and mom have a home, and let's say they have some savings on the side. Maybe they have a $100,000 of CDs or savings, whatever it is. So mom and dad are 70 years old. They're in pretty good health. So they're trying to figure out if there's anything they can do to protect what they have in case they go to a nursing home in the future. They kind of figure that's a possibility. They don't want to burden their children, and their children, quite frankly, don't want to be burdened, but their children will do what they have to do. But dad and mom are trying to protect what they have. So pretty easy to move the CDs and even move the home into a trust where all that's protected the home's protected from estate recovery after mom and dad pass away. More on that in another video. But dad's still stuck with this $300,000 IRA. He really can't get it in his name. But he's 70, he's in good health. Maybe he says to himself, maybe I will go ahead and take some more distributions than are required. I know I got to take a little bit out now that I'm 70 and a half, but that amount is really not much. So dad says, I think what I'm going to do, I'm in a low income tax bracket because I'm retired. I'm going to take out, let's say, $40,000 a year for the next 4 years. And he's in a low income tax bracket, so he takes his $40,000 annual distributions, pays the income tax, and then moves that after-tax money into a trust where 5 years after it's moved into a trust, it's protected from the nursing home. So he's not taking a huge distribution in any 1 year that would cause him to go into the mid-30s income tax bracket. He's taken $40,000 distributions each year, which he's calculated as manageable, not going to bump him into a higher income tax bracket. So, so now when dad is, say, 80, his CDs, his home, and roughly $160,000 of his IRA has been moved into a trust. More than 5 years has passed since he has done all of that, and he still has about $140,000 in his IRA, but realizing that with this community spouse resource allowance, if dad or mom go into a nursing home, they can have in 2019 $126,420, but that number is going to go up every year because it's adjusted for inflation. So just keep in mind that that's a strategy. Another strategy worth mentioning is if dad has a $300,000 IRA, again, common sense says name mom as the primary beneficiary, but if they're worried about future nursing home expenses, maybe dad names his kids as the primary beneficiaries, because if dad dies first and that IRA goes to the kids, it doesn't get lumped into mom's IRA where she would be forced to spend it all, at least down to $2,000 or less, by dad leaving it to the kids and kids having an understanding we're just going to set that money aside because we want to use it for mom if she needs it. But it would be a scenario where it would not be forced to be spent if mom went into a nursing home. Maybe that money could use to supplement her care over and above what Medicaid would cover for mom. So there you have it, the kind of big brush issues on are IRAs protected from nursing homes, and does Medicaid consider an IRA a countable asset, and what to do about it if it's an issue. So I hope that helps. I'm Paul Rabelais. Comment below on on any kind of other things you can add to this. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, give it a thumbs up, like, and we'll see you next time. Y'all take care.